please turn on the live stream and let us know when we're live, and we'll get started. Okay, Madam Vice Chair, we're now live. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Brittany. So I'm calling the meeting to order, and it is 10:01. And yeah, so we'll start with approval of the agenda and additions to the agenda. So first of all, can I have a motion for approval of the agenda? Danuta? Do we need a seconder, Brittany? Could I have a seconder, please? Luke? Thank you, Luke. Do we need to vote on that? Show of hands? Could we have a show of hands of the approval of the agenda? All right, and so any additions to the agenda? And I have some additions through Kathy. Does anyone else have any other additions to the agenda?
I haven't looked at that, but was the item about talking to the person up on Manitoulin Island included on that?
No. So
Okay.
So this is the past Climate Action Coordinator from Manitoulin?
Yeah,
all
for
right.
Central Manitoulin and Billings Township.
Okay.
Kim Neal.
Yeah, all right, so that could be, yes, Sue?
I'm just wondering, I had submitted two kind of reports. Are those already on there, Brittany? Because I do want to update one. They finally published the online version, so I could go in and find the answer to my question.
So which
So if those are already on, that's good.
And are those on, Brittany?
So I believe what you're referring to, Deputy Mayor Carlton, is the PCP notes that you had forwarded. Yes, we did circulate those to the committee by email. So we will get to those at the agenda. Now, they are not noted on your agenda, but I will prompt you, Vice Chair, to call upon those under new business.
And that also includes then the notes on the electric vehicles? All right.
That's correct.
Thank you. So the other additions via Kathy is a recommendation to do a little bit of a review of committee protocol, like the formalities, procedures as an advisory group. So kind of the whole concept of motions to council versus just actions and that kind of thing. And I think that's probably as much for the benefit of the community members on the committee who this is kind of foreign to. So a second one, when we have the presentation from Linda, which will be coming shortly, looking for data specific to Georgian Bluffs, if that some of that could be discussed. Wondering whether we need to bring a motion forward regarding emissions audit to council. Now, my memory actually after I saw that it was actually a motion that did go to council early on where the emissions audit was approved. So Brittany, I see you nodding. So that would be redundant if we did it again, I think.
I believe you're correct, Vice Chair. If you would permit me to do so, I would ask that the committee leave it with me and I can confirm that and either forward the motion that we had considered previously on the next agenda or make a recommendation regarding amended wording, etc. So I will take that away and confirm it prior to your next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. And also some discussion about kind of how the agenda for this committee is put together. And Kathy has some recommendations that were discussed with Trevor and Steve and Al. So that would be another agenda item. So do we need to have a motion to accept those additions to the agenda, or does that?
So I that would be my preference. So the motion can be that the agenda be approved as amended, and we'll just supersede the original motion that it be approved as presented. So I would ask that that motion be moved and seconded and then voted upon.
Actually, and I have an additional thing. We have an announcement coming from the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Team about an event. So that would be another addition. So can somebody move that that be amended? Sue, and a seconder, Luke. Luke. All right. Can I have a vote on that, please? All right. Thank you. Motion has passed. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Don't see any, so we can move on. Minutes of the previous meeting, which were attached to the agenda. The meeting was August 24th. The recommendation that the minutes of the meeting be approved. Can I see a motion for that? Danuta, thank you. Seconder, Sue, thank you. Show of hands. Thank you. So that motion has been approved, which brings us to delegations. And we have, yeah, sorry, Luke.
Sorry, I didn't know if there was an opportunity to clarify the minutes of the meeting. Is it the right time or not?
Yeah, it is the right time, sorry.
I was absent from the meeting. It's about point 911. There was which states, click it away, that there was a brief discussion regarding the work plan, included a timeline for the final draft of the climate action plan to council. And I just wanted to ask the committee, was there any kind of timeline? Was it more a general discussion, or did we settle on any kind of proposed timeline or at least an aspirational date?
Any comments? Now, Danuta, see your hand up.
I don't think we got as far as a timeline at the last meeting. We had a more general discussion, as I recall.
Okay.
And my memory was that there was also discussion around how to meld the timeline that the committee had developed with the timeline that Trevor will bring forward for his work team or work plan. Is my memory accurate on that one?
Yes, I think that Trevor, you had suggested you would give us more of a report about your internal work plan so we could have a better understanding.
Through you, Chairperson, to the member, to Luke, I believe we put a standing item on the agenda, so that would be Steve would provide an operational update, and within his operational update, there would be the internal work plan that he would speak to, and then we would provide a more definitive timeline. We do have a tentative timeline right now that we think will work within the 2-year period. But we're just trying to narrow it down to see for sure that will be the timeline.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Any questions? Any other questions on the previous minutes? All right, so can we move forward then to delegations? And we're lucky to have the opportunity to meet Linda Swanston, who is the manager of the Climate Actions Initiative for Grey County. Welcome, John. So Linda, you're here. All right. So welcome, Linda. I wonder for your benefit whether it would be useful just to do a really quick go around so you know who you're talking to and with. So I'll start because I'm talking now. My name is Ann Schneider, and I am the co-chair of the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Committee. I'm also co-chair of the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Team, which is the community-based climate action initiative. Who wants to go next?
I'm sitting beside you, Ann. My name's Bob Gray, and I just live maybe a 5-minute drive from Ann's place. We're having our house spray foamed this morning, and I just wanted to head for the hill so I don't get poisoned. But anyways, it's supposed to be helping the environment by tightening up this leaky old farmhouse that we live in. But I'm a retired terrestrial ecologist from the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and kind of a longtime naturalist. I still like to chase birds, and I make maple syrup and just kind of have 6 grandkids now as of last week. And I think it's really important to do something about the environment here because it's not looking good. So anyways, here I am, and pleased to meet you.
Who next? Sue, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So I'm Sue Carlton, Deputy Mayor of Georgian Bluffs, and we haven't met yet, Linda, but I'm actually the chair of the Grey County. So at some point we will get talking here. My contribution to climate change today is 2 loads of clothes out in the clothesline because it's such a beautiful day. And I've lived here for 40 years and have always done everything on my property as environmentally friendly as I can. We've let poor farmland go back into trees and shrubs that sort of brings lots more birds and bees and that type of thing to the area. So I'm very interested in it and looking forward to meeting you. Thanks.
Thanks, Sue. John, do you want to go next?
Morning, everyone. I'm John Anderson. Nice to meet you, Linda. I'm a retired marine scientist. I've lived in the area for 12 years now, and I've been very active on climate, giving many public talks, co-producing our film Resilience. And I continue to work with certainly this group, probably my most important, this Climate Action Committee, and many other groups from Collingwood to Thornbury, and of course our Climate Action Network. And right now we've got a team together reviewing your climate action plan. So.
Thanks, John. Danuta. You're on mute, Danuta.
I was trying to be good. My name's Danuta Vallo. Been living in Georgian Bluffs since 2005 and in Owen Sound since 2002. I'm a retired physiotherapist. I've had an interest in following in the environment, following climate action for quite some time. I'm also a volunteer with the Bruce Trail and steward for some of the properties around where I live. And I'm involved with the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Team, which is a citizens group, as well as the Georgian Grey Bruce Climate Action Network. And I was one of the people that organized the climate march last week in Owen Sound. And so lots of fingers in many pies. Wonderful to meet you, Linda. I've been looking forward to it.
Luke.
Hi, Linda. My name is Luc. I have not an environmental background and the expertise that others bring to the table. I am a concerned citizen, and I live in Georgian Bluffs and Big Bay. And as my day job, I have a company. I work with large polluters, but I look at it more like mining companies, energy companies, agroforestry companies. But I work more on human rights and company community relations.
So Trevor, have you met Linda already? You're on mute.
Yes, Chairperson. Myself and Linda have met on several occasions, and I've joined the community of practice with the other municipalities that Linda has set up, and I'm looking forward to talking through the community of practice with the other municipalities, and I think Linda will do a great job in sharing that.
Thank you, Trevor. And Brittany, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair. My name is Brittany. I am the clerk of the township, actually soon to be interim CAO, so effective tomorrow. So it's nice to meet you. I am looking forward to establishing a collaborative relationship between this committee and the county level to ensure we're all operating on the same page.
Okay. Thanks, Brittany. So the floor is yours, Linda, and I wonder if you could introduce yourself a little bit, tell us who you are, and then move into what you want to share with us.
Absolutely, and through the chair, thank you to all of the committee members for your introductions. It's always so nice to know a little bit about who's together. And I'll also just say that the deputy CAO from the county, Randy, is also on the call with us. I think most of you know him, but I'll let him introduce himself maybe after I introduce myself. So I joined the county at the beginning of August. I'm a newcomer to the area, so I've moved up to Owen Sound, downtown Owen Sound, from the city of Toronto. So it's a little bit different. But in the city of Toronto, where I lived on and off for most of my life, I had worked for the actual city Environment and Energy Division for the last 8 years or so, and had led the development of their climate action strategy, Transform TO. So climate action strategy work is something that I'm quite familiar with, and it is very similar and very different here in terms of the context and the issues. So even in the month, or I guess 6 weeks or so I've been here, it's been really fascinating to sort of start to understand, begin to understand what climate action looks like in the Grey County context. And maybe I'll hand it over to Randy before I put my slides up.
Thanks, Linda, and good morning, everyone. And my name is Randy Schurtzer. I'm the Deputy CEO / Director of Planning for Grey County, and obviously we're looking forward to the discussion today with respect to the Climate Change Action Plan. I'm originally from Grey County, actually born and raised in former Derby Township, which obviously is part of Township of Georgian Bluffs, and yeah, it's I of course went away to university, moved away for a little bit, then came back about almost 20 years ago, and been with the Grey County ever since, and through various roles and positions, and just started this new deputy CAO role, and it's still it's going to be a slow transition into this new role, but looking forward to working with groups like yourself and others, and of course with Linda's expertise. We're so fortunate to have someone with Linda's knowledge and expertise with respect to climate change, helping us to work together to hopefully address and move forward with some climate change actions going forward. So anyways, that's a bit of that, and of course Linda's the star of the show today for the presentation, and I'll turn it back over to Linda.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Randy. And I am very aware that all of you have been part of this county climate action strategy process from the outset. So my intent today is certainly not to sort of tell you all the things you already know, but rather spend a little bit of time just saying, this is where we currently are, but really focus both the presentation and the conversation on what's going to happen next. So I will start sharing my slides. I always have just one or too many windows to open. Flip this up here. Great. So I'll just, if someone could just confirm, you can see the slides okay? I'm seeing Randy nodding. Fantastic. I did want to start with a land acknowledgement. And so this is the county land acknowledgement. I know some municipalities, you have your own, but as I start the presentation, I would like to acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and the culture of the Anishinaabeg, Six Nations of the Grand River, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, Wyandot peoples, on whose traditional territories we gather and whose ancestors signed treaties with our ancestors. We recognize also the Métis and the Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all of its diverse peoples. And I did want to start with this because obviously I'm an incredible newcomer to this specific piece of land, and also to acknowledge that as a first-generation Canadian on my mom's side from the UK and a third-generation Canadian on my dad's side from Italy, that my own and my family's access to this land over the past few generations has really shaped what my life looks like and given me a lot of opportunities for which I'm really grateful. And specifically in this work around environmental stewardship and climate action, as treaty peoples, it's, I think, really important to be thinking about how climate action can play a part in the project of reconciliation that is so important in Canada at this time. As I mentioned, the agenda kind of outlines a few different pieces that I'm going to speak to, but the real focus is going to be on next steps. But that said, certainly if there are any questions about specific content within the presentation or within the draft strategy, Randy and myself are more than happy to try and address them. This version of the presentation has 1 or 2 slides different than what was previously circulated, and I've just put these discussion questions at the front. So just to flag that as I'm moving through the content, where I'd like to spend the bulk of the time is really at the end to say, you know, does the county plan have the right targets? What should we do first? What should our priority actions be? Do you have any recommendations for us around engagement to finalize the plan? And that can also include how much engagement is needed at this point, or if the community and you really feel you sort of provided your comment and are satisfied. And then finally, even for today, but also going forward, to talk about how we can collectively implement the strategies, which is, you know, the point of all this. The project process you're well familiar with. A vision statement was crafted really about leadership and action to create an equitable and accessible community that is inclusive of both urban and rural lifestyles. I don't need to tell you this, but I do like to just take a moment and acknowledge that I think too often we think about climate change as something else or in the future, and really it is something that is here and now. You know, whether it be air quality warnings from wildfires or flooding in Williamsburg in 2016, or the kind of damage we saw the houses from the tornadoes in June of this year, and then most recently the storm clouds from just a couple of weeks ago, when obviously residents lost power for a number of days. And beyond these very local realities of climate change, we also have the recently issued IPC United Nations report, which, you know, flags that this is a moment of code red for humanity, and it's really the time to be taking action. I think you're well aware of the project objectives. And again, what we wanted to talk about today is really finalizing item 4, so this climate action change plan. Much like the work that Trevor is doing with your municipality, the county's work has also aligned with the Partners for Climate Collection Plan process. And what we're doing now is really trying to finalize milestone 3, having covered milestones 1 and 2. I'll pause here for a moment because I do think it's important to sort of speak to who has been part of the conversation so far. Municipalities, the health unit, conservation authorities, the sort of grassroots community climate action teams, which I know a number of you are also members of. There were 2 surveys, as well as a number of consultation workshops. And we have also tried to connect with different sectors, including those focused on economic development and agriculture, along with a number of other stakeholders listed at the bottom. The draft findings, I know you've seen these before, but just to say that really agriculture is a significant opportunity for the county in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And between agriculture, private vehicles, and buildings, almost 90% of our local greenhouse gas emissions are represented. Corporately, it's a little bit different, as you would expect. We don't currently have any agricultural operations. And I will flag that this is specific to county assets. So this would be county owned and operated vehicles or county owned and operated buildings. It would not include the emissions associated with the corporate operations of the member municipalities. And so here you can see that buildings are sort of 60% and fleet almost the entire balance. So one of those guiding questions about whether or not we have the right targets, as I believe you would know, the county's proposed targets in the draft plan are a 15% reduction by 2030 and a 50% reduction by 2050. And what you see in this graph is within that draft plan, each of the proposed actions, where possible, there's been a quantification of emissions reduction. And sort of all added up together, that wine colored line is representative of the total emissions reduction those estimated strategies would achieve. So you can see it puts us on a good path for the 2030 target and moves us towards that 50% by 2050 target. And some of that gap is sort of represented by what the county would hope to fill by increasing ambition over time within those strategies, technological innovations, and also recognizing that for the majority of the agricultural strategies and actions, it isn't currently possible to quantify their emission reduction. So we know that they're the right things. Well, we believe that they're the right things to do, and that's why they're included in the draft. But we aren't able to quantify what the emission reduction would be. So this is for the community emissions, and then similarly for the corporate targets, we have a more ambitious 20% by 2030 and 60% proposed by 2050. And here, again, because of the absence of agricultural emissions in the corporate portfolio, we do have a reduction scenario that puts us in pretty good shape for both of those targets. A little bit of an update on what other local jurisdictions are doing, and this has evolved somewhat since the counties initially set those targets in early 2020. So at the bottom, you can see that the federal target has been updated, and it's now 40 to 45% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. And similarly, both Dufferin and Wellington County in the last year and a half or so have adopted net zero plans. So just a little bit of local context, as well as, again, that update to the level of federal ambition. So then the question, of course, what should we do here in Grey County? Not going to go through each of these, but again, I really welcome anyone's questions around the strategies that are presented in the draft plan around these 7 pillars for the community action strategies, and similarly, the 4 areas of effort identified corporately. This is, I guess, to respond or to sort of start the conversation around that idea of what we should do first. Really look at this list as almost a brainstorm at this point. It's certainly not a confirmed direction, but some of the program areas that are potentially of priority in the implementation. So establishing a local green development standard in partnership with the municipalities, expanding renewable energy generation, collective awareness and education campaigns. You'll probably all have seen the coverage of the carbon footprint calculator that was launched in Collingwood recently with Project Neutral, that kind of education and outreach, expanding local transit options, electric vehicle infrastructure, trying to lead by example with the county's own assets, making sure there's a variety of transportation available to all users or sort of options on roadways, really trying to, I was going to say beef up, which maybe is locally appropriate, but make sure there's strong connections between the agri-food sector and climate action. And then, of course, natural assets around potentially municipal tree bylaws and partnering with conservation authorities and municipalities to strengthen our natural heritage and hazard mapping. So just things to get the conversation started, really identified on this slide. And then I will spend a few moments just talking about the idea of how we should do this. I think as we think about the kind of investments and transformations that are going to be needed to reduce our local greenhouse gas emissions, we really want to make sure we're thinking through what else we can deliver as we design these programs and make these investments. So again, within the draft plan, this is the current language around centering Indigenous knowledge and leadership, and recognizing, as both the federal government and the IPCC does, that Indigenous knowledge has a unique and central role to play in thinking about how to respond to the current climate crisis. So trying to work in partnership with Indigenous communities and First Nations locally to understand what that looks like here in Grey County. This is, I think, something worth noting, that the county's first focus has been on a mitigation plan to reduce our local greenhouse gas emissions, but our climate has already changed, as those first images showed. And so strategy 21 within the plan is to create an adaptation strategy or an adaptation plan. And obviously, this is vital for us to try and avoid some of the worst immediate impacts of the kind of extreme weather that we're increasingly seeing. And I think this slide does a good job of illustrating that oftentimes a mitigation action can also be an adaptation action. And so one of the ways we'll be seeking to finalize and implement the mitigation plan is to build adaptation into it as much as we're able. And as I mentioned, this real effort to understand, and this is one of the things we would seek feedback from you and others on, is how can we make these climate action strategies into job creation strategies or energy sector innovation opportunities? What are the ways that these programs and policies can do more than just reduce greenhouse gas emissions? The next steps are just to continue public and stakeholder consultation through November and bring an updated plan back to the Climate Change Task Force and Council by early 2022, and then begin implementation. So these, again, are sort of these comment and discussion questions that we're hoping to get your feedback on. Are these the right targets? Are these the right actions? What should we prioritize? How can we work together to implement? And then also number 5, really around engagement. And I think, in terms of the single most useful piece of feedback you could give to us today, it's really about how much more engagement and what that engagement should look like as we seek to finalize the plan. Because we certainly don't want to create consultation fatigue, but we also want to make sure that everyone who is interested has the opportunity to give feedback on this draft plan that the county has created. So with that, I will say thank you and stop sharing my screen, and really looking forward to the discussion.
So thank you very, very much, Linda. That was a really great overview. So questions and discussion. Luke, and then Danuta.
Linda, thanks for that. Very useful. And I like the pace that you kept. Really much appreciated. And kind of a naive question, perhaps, but when I saw the slides and the goals of Dufferin and Wellington with their net zero, I mean, you see this coming, of course, but you probably get it all the time. But if their ambition is to say we're net zero by 2050, sorry. What are the obstacles for Grey County to achieve to set the same targets? There's probably very good legitimate reasons for not going that far, but I would still be quite interested to see what is it that why are other counties able to make such bold state such bold targets, and is there something that is different in Grey than what they're dealing with?
So through the chair, thank you, Luke, for the question. So I think one of the things that the county, we really focused on in setting these targets initially was achievability. We heard very clearly from the task force that they wanted to make sure whatever targets were set could be met. And so the approach that Grey County has used is really bottom up, where, as I mentioned, there was this effort to estimate the potential reduction of different actions and then kind of stack those on top of each other and set targets. I think, and I would, having also attended the same PCP workshop that both Trevor and Deputy Mayor Carleton did, there was some really interesting discussion there about different approaches to target setting. And I think one of the things that we at the county are currently doing is reopening this discussion about what appropriate targets are. There's this approach of bottom up where we're seeking to see what is possible. And then there's also increasingly a recognition from the global science about what is necessary to avoid the worst impacts of climate change and kind of hit that 1.5 degree compliance. And so that really is a question, I think, from the county to the community at this time as to if the county's targets are the right targets. And I'll certainly let Randy add anything to that if there's anything he thinks should be.
No, I think Linda's described it exactly. In terms of, making sure that the targets were realistic was something we heard for sure from the Climate Change Task Force and Council. At the same time, on the heels of the UN report and we're seeing like you indicated some other neighboring counties setting a net zero target. We know we're going to hear that through consultations with as part of this. So we want to at least have that discussion with our climate change task force and with council in terms of what that could be potentially, what that could look like in terms of whether it's different strategies and actions or just more of the same in terms of setting more ambitious targets and levels of moving forward quicker of implementing the action plan versus over a gradual period of time. So that's something that we want to explore further for sure.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Anne? Sorry, I don't want to dominate the discussion, but I was just thinking. I wonder if there is since it's a bit of a brainstorming session. I wonder if the discussion about target setting and bottom up or kind of looking at what's required, if that in and of itself wouldn't be a very interesting hook for a discussion about the urgency of this issue. This is no longer a nice to do issue, right? It is really kind of, it doesn't really, in some ways, I think the discussion in and of itself is a really interesting one to say, well, we can stick to what we think is achievable, but then we're basically all going down at the same time. So actually, we don't have much choice in terms of a target. It's either sink or swim, and there's not much in between, really. And I wonder if, when you brought it up to say, well, there's maybe an opportunity to revisit that targeting approach. I wonder if that's a hook to shake people up a little bit and to say, my goodness, this is actually, there's an additional level of urgency that we maybe hadn't realized before. And therefore, some targets are just not up for grabs. It's just not up for, we just have to do it. There is just, we're running out of options basically. And I wonder if that's something that would resonate with some residents. I don't know. I'm just thinking. When you mentioned it, I thought that was resonate.
Anne, you're just on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, and I'm telling you to unmute while I'm on mute. Did you want to respond to that? Thank you, Linda.
Through the chair, thank you. Thank you, Luke. I think that's useful feedback about how we might choose to frame any further public consultation. So we'll certainly make note of that. Yep.
And Danuta, you had your hand up.
Yes. I also had the same question about the targets because, especially looking at the next slide, you can see that they're quite modest. But in addition to what you discussed, and I appreciate the need for achievability, and so here may I borrow the word opportunity, the opportunity to maybe exceed those targets or use that word, or maybe a range of what you think is achievable, but what is needed and necessary in the Code Red situation for people to see not just the target, but which can be achieved, but really where they need to think about having to go to achieve that. The other thing I wanted to just talk about briefly is engagement, because in Georgian Bluffs, it's quite difficult to engage. Personally, I look at the community in Georgian Bluffs, and there are a whole lot of people I never have met and have absolutely nothing in common with, because we don't have a common city center or anything like that. So it's a very challenging community to work with. And there are squeaky wheels, and there are other people who are maybe too quiet about what. And so how do you engage a community like that? And I'm wondering if all of Grey County and the municipalities can work together on engagement in that respect, somehow hop on community engagement, or whether it's better for municipalities to, as they are all some are quite unique. Some are city-based, some are rural-based, can work on a model together that when they have things in common. And I know, Trevor, you have been looking a lot at community engagement. I'm just reading the letters from Open North and how you're getting advice from them. And the idea about stakeholders. And I'm thinking about how can you bring people together that don't all read the same paper, follow the same Facebook column, silo, and so on and so forth. How can we as a community actually open dialogue as a community? And whether it involves bringing different groups together in different scenarios, or actually having, bye, Michael. He says goodbye. If you know what I mean, anyway, I'll end there, but I'm just trying to think about how you can bring people from different viewpoints actually face to face to have conversations about a new topic, which is new to them. They're not comfortable talking about it.
Linda, do you want to respond to that?
Through you, the chair, I mean, it's such a great question and it's such a great opportunity. And I think the one comment I would make is that for myself and in conversation with Randy, we want to strike the right balance between having as much conversation and dialogue as needed around this draft plan, but also not spending so long trying to finalize this plan in an engagement process that it delays action. And so when we've been thinking about engagement, and Trevor and I have spoken about this as well, there's kind of the engagement to finalize these plans, but then there's almost the more important engagement to implement these plans. And so if we can use the consultation process around finalizing the plan to build some awareness and some initial interest between diverse stakeholders, then to be able to really invest in those relationships to implement and do a deeper engagement at that time.
I think that's a really good comment. And I'm just going to jump in and say that I do think the idea of moving into some positive action can actually be a way of engaging people. When people actually see good results, that's a really good way of engagement. Other questions for Linda? Unmute, please, John.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Vice Chair. Linda, thanks for that presentation. I have a couple of questions, and I think the first one is quite linked to what Danuta just commented on. But we are in a two-tier municipal system here in Grey, and you only have control over the corporate assets of Grey County, for example. And then there's 9 sub-tier second level municipalities. Now, as part of my work with the Climate Action Network, I'm keeping track of progress on these different municipalities putting climate action plans in place. And right now, there's only 3 that are moving towards a climate action plan out of the 9. So I guess my specific question is do you have mechanisms at the county level that could get these other 6 municipalities on side actually developing their own climate action plans, which will be necessary going forward to meet any reduction targets?
Through the Vice Chair, thank you, John. So I think, we can look at those mechanisms both in terms of any kind of actual authorities that might exist, and then also I think more significantly around climate action planning, how we might be able to collaborate or incent action. And first of all, congratulations to Georgian Bluffs for being one of the municipalities that is moving forward on your own corporate plan. I mean, that's fantastic. What I've heard so far in conversations I've had, because I have connected with each of the member municipalities, is that for some of them, given their size and their resourcing, they're really looking to the county to kind of take the lead, and set targets and establish best practices, and then would seek to implement them. So rather than establishing their own green fleet plan, they would look to how the county approached a green fleet plan and then try and adopt that themselves. So I think I would say, sort of almost tying back to the most recent conversation, the absence of a dedicated plan doesn't necessarily mean for a municipality that they won't be able to take climate action. But all that said, one of the things we are looking at is we have established this municipal community of practice, with representation from each at the staff level from each of the member municipalities, to really, I guess, at the staff level, kind of support the work of the climate change task force. So the climate change task force is bringing together elected officials from each of the member municipalities, chaired by the county. And then at the staff level, we'll have a community of practice to try and do the same thing.
Okay, that's good. Just then, as a follow-up to that, is what mechanism do you have in place that would allow us to track this progress then as you go forward? So if a municipality doesn't formally declare, as Georgian Bluffs has, that we're going to develop both a mitigation and adaptation strategy plan, do you have a mechanism, a communication mechanism that would allow people like me and our group to keep up with that?
Through the meeting chair, I mean, it's a great question. And I think one of the pieces, and I'm going to have to look and see which strategy number it is, but that milestone 5 of implementation the milestone 5 is around implementation and monitoring. And so I think coming up with ways for both the county and member municipalities to track progress is going to be an important part of the plan. So I would say it doesn't exist yet, but there is that intent to have a monitoring mechanism.
Okay, thanks very much. That's encouraging. Just very quickly, my second question relates to your numbers. Your GHG estimates. I'm a bit of a numbers guy, so you have to understand that. Previously, I was working with Hiba Hussein, who was at Grey County, and then she connected me with Caitlin Rogers, who was the lead at ICLEI Canada on those numbers, and we were doing a bit of engagement. So my question is really simple. I don't understand a lot about the methodology that was actually used. And is there someone at Grey that I could actually interact with? And this is, rolling up your sleeves and looking under the lid at, some of the ways these numbers are calculated, because I'm very interested in that. And not everything's adding up for me at this point. So do I have a contact I can work with?
Through the chair, that first line of defense is probably me. So do feel free to reach out. And I mean, I think it sounds like, as a numbers person, and I mean, there's so much expertise on this committee that there's a number of you, but just to say that methodologies around GHG accounting, as you would well know, are evolving. And so I'm more than happy to try and answer any questions that I can. And it's an interesting area in and of itself to talk about how we count and why we count things the way we do, and if it's the right approach. So
okay.
I will do my best.
Okay. Thanks very much. Back to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Linda. Other questions for Linda or for Randy? I don't see any hands up. I have a comment, and it could be a question. Looking at your numbers in terms of the emissions inventory for the municipality, the community-based one, the agricultural emissions is at 40%, and that's certainly the numbers we've been hearing in other areas as well. But that, to me, creates a huge challenge, because agriculture is a very big part of our community, our municipality, our county. And I think that when it comes to climate change and climate change discussions, I think our farming community often feels blamed. And I think it's really important to think about engagement with that group, which is within itself a pretty diverse group. And I think it really needs to have some good discussion around how to do that. And I'm not suggesting that that needs to be done kind of prior to implementation, but as it moves forward to implementation, I think we need to be aware of that. And I think use the brains around the whole table, so both the municipal staff, the county staff, but also the community members to try to figure that out.
I can maybe add some comments based on that. And I think in Grey County, we're fortunate enough to have some great working relationships already with a number of agriculture organizations that's truly connected to the agricultural community. And I think there's already some great initiatives already underway through programs like the Alice program, and the great work that Greg Services does, that the county contributes and provides space currently for Greg Services to provide those connections and services to various farmers and agricultural community at large. So with that, I think based on that great working relationship that we have already with those agriculture communities, I think there will be lots of opportunity, I think, to work with the overall agriculture community to move forward with some further action, because I think, like I said, there's some great work already being done, and let's work together collectively to move that forward and to enhance some of that existing work. And that's where Linda indicated it's difficult to quantify some of that right now. And so going forward, we'd like to try to come up with ways where we can try to quantify that better and to share those success stories that are already happening, as well as some future success stories in terms of working with the agriculture community to make a difference and to reduce our overall collective greenhouse gas emissions. So that's something that we really look forward to working with those groups and organizations.
Thanks, Randy. So any last question for Linda or for Randy? I don't see any hands up. All right, well, on behalf of the committee, Linda and Randy, I really want to thank both of you for coming, and it's been a really interesting presentation. I know I, for one, and I think I can echo the other committee members, are really anxious to see this move forward and to continue working with you. So thank you so much. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Delegate or no correspondence. We have no correspondence that I'm aware of. So that moves us to staff reports. And 7.1 is operational updates. And I think that is Steve that will be presenting on that. Is that correct, Trevor? Yes, Steve. Hi, Steve. Welcome. So
that's correct, Chairperson.
Through you, Chair Schneider, to the committee, just wanted to give everybody an update of what we're doing here and with the climate action. We are currently in the process of getting a work plan for everybody here shortly. It's been taking a bit more time. We have been looking at the PCP links, the BARC links, the climate action work plan that you guys have as well. We also are looking at the strategic plan and other work plans that council has driven for us to create a proper work plan for you guys that we can share to you how we're going to move forward on the steps of doing the emissions baselining step first, hitting that milestone 1. And then once we get that, we'll be able to provide to all the committee members here for you guys to see a little bit more of a dashboard approach of where we're at with targeting and stuff like that. So you guys can keep more of a track of what we're up to here and try and move this process along so that we can do what we're trying to do with the emissions baseline and also other items here too. Just so everybody is aware, we are working with a company right now to start doing on the fleet component first. Starting with fleet is the smaller portion on the piece, the baselines for the emissions and stuff like that. So we're trying to get that information coming back to us then. Then once we've done the fleet component, then we'll be working on to our facilities, and then we'll be working on to the other assets within the township from a corporate point of view. It is going to be small bites right now first, and it's, I can't just, take a big bite of the pizza, but, we're going to try to take our time and do this properly so that we can come up with a plan that's going to be very volatile for the next 2 years and the way we're going to keep going. So that's just the operations update for today, and then we will have more as we go along through this process.
Thanks, Steve. Any questions for Steve on that? So Luke and then Bob.
Thanks, Steve. 2 questions. One is, what is your anticipated timeline in terms of getting that work plan, and to what extent can we help or support you in pulling that together? And second would be, is there any? Just to get a bit of an understanding. I mean, about these emissions inventory. I understand you want to take bite-sized pieces, but I also wonder, we've heard from other municipalities, is that it is actually quite doable because much of the information and data already exists. So is there in any which way, again, kind of a way by which we can support you, or just to kind of get that milestone in place?
So through you, Chair Schneider, to Luke. Sorry, I'm kind of at the Keppel shop, so if my video breaks up, I apologize. In regards to the work plan, I'm hoping to have something to everybody in the committee here within the next week. I've been kind of tied down with some other work plan items I had to take care of first, but now that I've kind of got some free time, I'll be able to kind of finalize it and have it to you guys by the end of next week. Some of the stuff for the fleet component, because some of our equipment is a bit older than what normally is within municipalities and stuff, we're going to be kind of looking at those different websites that have the emissions and information that way as well. The consultant that we're kind of working with, he's been doing fleet strategies on green emissions and all that and baselining for probably about 20 years. Very knowledgeable on it. He knows that stuff. It's simple. It's nothing too, it's going to be an easy way for us to kind of move forward. I can see us having the fleet component done within the next month, and then we'll be working on the facilities after that. So it's going to be a quick turnaround, but it's even with smaller kind of approaches to it, it's going to be a fast kind of turnaround approach, but it's just going to be, we're going to kind of take it one step at a time.
That's okay, Luke?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think we're all very impatient. I think that's just, so that's, we all want to see it done yesterday, of course, because I think we are, I mean, for me, and again, sitting a bit on the sideline, but there is a sense of urgency. And I think we're now 2 months to Trevor's stint, and that means there is 22 months left, and the clock is counting. And I'm just thinking about, what do we? That also goes back to the earlier question in terms of what's the commitment, or did we make a commitment last time to the council to say, well, or not we, but was there a commitment made to say, okay, we want to have that climate action plan in place at a certain time? Because I think there's so much work that still needs to be done, and or to support, and it's just we're I think wanting to see something sooner than later, and also are willing to put in the sweat equity to make it happen. That's basically, I think, where we're coming from.
Steve?
Through you, Chair Schneider, to Luke. If I get into a point where I'm going to need some help, I will be reaching out to the committee for the expertise and help from everybody here. It is a team approach. It's just right now I'm kind of working, trying to get everything kind of together. Once I get that work plan to you, then we'll kind of brainstorm something to do our next steps as a team and move us forward. So I will be willing to keep you guys in the loop of all steps I go through.
Thanks, Steve. I think, Bob, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I think the question has been answered more or less. I think in the same way of Luke, like just kind of get, it'd be nice to see something in writing in terms of what sort of stuff we're up to and the targets that you have in mind, and just kind of moving things ahead, and just not knowing where we are and how fast we can move here and how we can help you. So I think you pretty well covered that. I think we're just kind of all chomping at the bit to get on with it and help where we can. Okay, thanks, Steve.
All right. Anything else, Steve? Yes?
I believe Danuta had a question. I kind of saw her put her hand up there for a second. Oh, okay.
Danuta? No? Okay. No. All right. So anything else from you, Steve?
At this time, no.
Okay, so I think that takes us to engagement and consultation strategy, and that's you, Trevor, I think. All right.
Yes. So through you, Chair, to the committee. So I'm working with Open North Advisory. I've worked with them previously. They were devising a strategy to access LiDAR data from Manitoba Hydro in my previous contract. And then we were also working on municipal software procurement and GIS. And they did an excellent job throughout. So I got in touch with them again. I had to do another pitch this time. And this time I pitched to them doing engagement and consultation, but also taking into account, fourth wave of COVID and how this would have to be a hybrid approach in terms of engagement and consultation, because we just don't know next year or, even the year after what things are going to look like in that sense. So they accepted the pitch. And then they matched me with they have a number of advisors is what they call them. So they matched me with an advisor, and I think it's been a good match. And I want to emphasize that we were just developing a strategy. So if you read the notes that was provided by the advisor, at no point did it say implementation. I think there was some confusion to that as well. So at no point am I implementing a strategy right now. It's just to create the plan, and Open North would put their logo on that. And just if you're not familiar with Open North, maybe do a little Google search after this, but also know that they are backed by Evergreen, which you're probably familiar with Evergreen if you've been to the Don Valley and to the Brickworks. And they're also, the funding is backed by Infrastructure Canada. So there was also some question as to the legitimacy of this process, and I can confirm that they are legitimate. So I just wanted to emphasize those points. And I also wanted to say as well, and I think that got lost in translation, this is free of charge. So I get 3 sessions with an advisor. I get to pick when. So I don't go back to them until I feel comfortable. And they give me homework to do. And I've kind of brought my homework to you guys because I feel this is quite applicable. So I'm not asking for all your, your networks and your secret contacts and whoever that you go to. I'm just asking for information that you feel comfortable giving to me. And then we will put it into a plan that you would feel comfortable about. So, I'm not going to run off and talk to so-and-so if you give me that contact information, unless you completely feel comfortable in giving me that contact. And no time would I be doing that until the plan has been created, which I'm only on session 1. I don't anticipate that the strategy won't be created until November or later in the year. And then I'm at no point going to implement that strategy until we find a time that is suitable to do so. And I just want to emphasize those points. I think there was kind of a thinking that I was going to run out and start grabbing people off the street and talking to them about climate change. I was not having the tools and the resources that I would need to be able to do that. And then as well, I realized that there is an incredible resource sitting right here in this virtual room, as well with the county as well. So, and I just wanted to emphasize those points. And if there's any question that you can ask me that right now before we go through essentially my homework.
So questions for Trevor. Danuta and then Luke. And yeah.
I think it's great that you would come to us for contacts and things, and that's certainly an area that we can help because we all have different. But I would need to understand the plan and the strategy in order to know what information to give you. That what would work within that, your approach. Do you know what I mean? So please continue to work with us. It's really great to hear more about what you're doing there. That's all.
Trevor, do you want to respond?
Through you, Chair, to the member. Yes, of course, stakeholder mapping. So a lot of what I do is policy shop talk, which, you know, you think bureaucratic and things like that. So we're trying to identify a policy, what we call window, essentially, for this work to be done. And that window can only open if certain things come into play. For example, there needs to be a communication strategy, which I will be working with Brittany and Carly to help develop. For example, I notified Bob that the Facebook post went up in regards to the work that John had done, and that it also went up on the website. So in terms of communications, like we're little steps there. And in terms of stakeholders, we're doing this stakeholder mapping, which is also a policy thing as well. But stakeholder mapping is a great process to go through and to identify who those key stakeholders are within the community, and what do we actually want for them, and how do we want to engage them. And then they're going to tell us as well, how do they want to be engaged? A lot of stakeholders don't want to sit on monthly meetings. They may just want updates and things like that. So, and that will have to go into the strategy. And Open North is amazing, and this advisor is amazing. He did his research. So I think the point was made that there was no central downtown, and the advisor knew that before I even got on the meeting in his research. And he's working in the United States, and he's worked with smaller communities in the States. So, and I think that there's also the point made as well that, you know, a lot of people may not be receptive. Well, this advisor has worked in adversarial environments. I've come from northern Manitoba. I can guarantee you that I've worked in some of the most adversarial environments in terms of engagement. So, so that experience is there, but there are methodologies to use when that occurs. So I just want to note that as well. Like, you know, these people know what they're talking about.
Luke?
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. So a little bit the same question as Danuta in terms of, I think it's great to have a framework in place, but I think the work plan probably would determine what the implementation strategy would look like. And one of the things that I think is important is that we probably, probably this committee would be in a good position to think a bit about how do we position this climate action plan. What is the level of collaboration that we seek? Are we going to inform people? Are we going to collaborate? Are we going to consult? Where are we sitting on that spectrum of the participation framework? And how do we in terms of a tone, in terms of like you say, the stakeholder maps, the key stakeholders. And I think that's probably, and I don't know what options we would have, but I would imagine that we have 3 or 4 different options to say, well, what is the narrative, and that will also then define who we should talk with, where, how often, what are the KPIs, and to really kind of build that stakeholder framework together, or that engagement framework. And I'm very happy to talk about the stakeholder analysis. I think it would be a really interesting way to also, I hope there is an exercise that also looks at the power dynamics, just you get a bit of a spaghetti diagram with, you know, who's actually influencing whom, and is it a positive impact, is it a negative impact, what is the level of impact they have and influence they have over the municipality, what's the level of interest in these kind of issues, so that we really can zoom in on, if you only have the resources to talk to, let's say, 25 stakeholder groups, which are the key ones? And they may not be the most obvious ones, right? Because they may be informally pulling a lot of strings that we're not aware of. unless we do a proper stakeholder analysis. So I'd be really keen to see how that works, because it is a great tool if it's done well. And yeah, and I do a lot of stakeholder engagement plans for communities in different contexts. So if I'm happy to look at it. Not that well, if there's one thing I do know a little bit about is that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to take a look and also kind of shake it up a little bit and try to poke some holes in it to make it really rigorous.
Trevor, any response to Luke?
Just through the chair to the member and to committee. I look at this forum that we're having right now, this discussion, I consider this a very safe and controlled forum in terms of if we're, to use policy language. And then understandably, once you go out into the committee, it becomes less controlled. So for example, I use the trails. The trails example that Steve was part of. So he's going out into the community and getting that feedback through surveys and through other aspects and talking to the key stakeholders. There are, of course, are going to be agendas, and I'm well aware that is the case. And I don't think you have to keep in mind that we're using a municipal scope as well. So the municipality has a duty, fiduciary duty to collect that information, whether there's an agenda behind it or not, and those agendas compete with other agendas. And I think that we have to keep that in mind. It's not that, and a municipality can't favor an agenda over another. They have to look at a cross section of what is the information that is out there and how do the stakeholders, how do they feel in a sense on an issue. And we have that duty as the municipality. So going from that controlled to a little bit lesser controlled, but also having a strategy in place is key. So it doesn't become, as we would say, off the rails. And we want to keep this moving forward, and we want to keep it moving forward within the timeline that we have. And we want to have a great result as well.
Luke, any response?
Yeah, just so that's thanks, Trevor. So then to both you and Steve, so then the work plan for next week, does it come with a strategy, or is the strategy separate from the work plan?
Steve?
Through you, Chair Schneider, to Luke, the work plan will come first, and then the strategy will come after that. So we'll get the work plan in place first, kind of deal, show what's going on, and then we'll get the feedback from the committee here, and then that will help us influence what our next steps are on a stakeholder strategic plan kind of deal, and work our way through all this.
Thank you, Steve. Can I just ask just some clarification, because I'm hearing the term plan used, and when I think of plan, in my mind, I go to climate action plan, but I'm also hearing engagement plan, and it's kind of two different plans, and I think it's really important when we're talking to be clear on which plan are we talking about. Steve, thank you.
Through you, Chair Schneider, to the committee here. So when I reference plans, I'm talking about the internal town staff work plan that we generate ourselves, which will then kind of help the committee here to structure the next steps into the goal lines of what we're trying to do, our milestones, right? Then that will turn into what goes into your climate action plan, and then you'll have an engagement plan after that. So what I'm talking about is what we're internally doing as the township staff level, which will then be presented to you guys as well. And then that will be the basis of how we start our process, and then we kind of work our way through.
So in essence, there's three plans, not two. There's
Correct.
The internal work plan, there's the final product climate action plan, and there's the engagement plan. Is that right?
That is correct. There's a lot of every plan you think about, more plans do come from them, but they're also stepping stones to get us into the next levels of where we need to go.
Yeah, I think it's helpful though to kind of define the different kind of terms of plan. So Trevor, you had your hand up.
Yes, Chairperson. I would just like to say that Steve is a project management wizard of sorts. Steve, his main work plan, I think, has 17 headers within it, and within it are assessments, scopes, plans, in which I'm currently reviewing for the project-specific climate lens that has been asked for. And it's an extremely organized process, but it's also, I have to work through it. And Steve has been doing a great job taking my work and integrating that within the entire operations framework. But as you can imagine, because climate change is new and it takes time to do that integration, and that's what we're doing right now. And also we're trying to provide the deliverables, and as well as I said yesterday, this will all be PCP compliant and ICLEI BART compliant as well.
Thanks, Trevor. And any other comments or questions for, I think at this point, Steve or Trevor? So I think what I'm hearing is that you will be coming to us shortly with what's going to be called the internal work plan with time targets attached to it. Am I right?
That is correct.
All right, wonderful. And I think you said in a week or so, Steve?
That is correct. I will have it to you guys by next week.
Right, so that should probably inform our next committee timeframe in terms of when we meet next, because it would be good to meet when you got that done. Okay, no other comments, questions for Luke?
Yeah, sorry for harping on. So we have an internal work plan by the end of next week. Then what is then the proposed timeline for the revision of our work plan, our committee work plan? Because that was, I think, 2 months ago, we said that would be kind of a priority, in the weeks after. So I'm just very keen about about the time and the sense of urgency. So if we have the plan, if you have the internal work plan, let's say by the end of September, it would be really nice if we could also have a revised work plan for our committee, because you would be in the best position to actually give that a good shake, and that we have maybe a revised work plan as input for the next, so that we don't have to discuss how to move it from there. But it would be great if we can use the next committee to kind of finalize that work plan based on a draft, if that's a realistic time frame.
Steve, do you want to respond, or?
Through you, Chair Snyder, to Luke, the intention is we get the internal work plan to you guys to review first. You will provide your comments back to me. Then we'll take your committee work plan as well, give it a good shake. And then by the time we do meet at the next month for our Climate Action Committee working group here, or the committee, then we'll do that finalized approach there and kind of make the final tweaks. And then we move forward and get going on all our aspects. So the intention is I'm waiting for you guys to kind of give me comments back after I send it to you. So it gives you some time to review it, kind of think it over, digest it, provide me some feedback. I'll take a look at the climate action work plan at the same time, and then we'll kind of merge the two kind of documents together to have a proper way of going.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So what I think I understood is that the internal work plan is going to be sent to us by email, and you're going to be looking for feedback to tweak it. And then that will come to our next meeting, and the review of the committee work plan will be melded together at that point. Do I have it right? Okay. All right, thank you. And actually, I think by doing that, we just covered 9.1 of the agenda, which was unfinished business, the community work plan. Is there anything else on the community work plan? I know I'm bouncing around a bit, but it doesn't make sense to go back to that again. Is that okay, Brittany? All right. Any other comment on the community work plan, or can we proceed with the agenda? No comments? All right. I don't think there are any public questions. No? All right. So, Brittany, is this where we go to the additions of the agenda? To the agenda? All right, thank you. I see Trevor's got his hand up. Trevor. You're on mute, Trevor. You're on mute.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to finish point 7.11. So I just wanted to, in the materials provided, there was the 2 emails. So there was the 3 calls were outlined for objectives and outcomes. So I've done call 1. And then if you have those in front of you, there's the second email, which says phase 1 preparation work. That's the material I'm preparing right now for the advisor. So, and what I'm asking here is to read through that and then to get in touch with me if you have ideas or potential stakeholder ideas that I can prepare for the advisor. So, and I tried to be as professional as possible for the advisor. So I tried to give them as much information as possible and do the work. And they also, so that they can give me a better result. And so just take a look at that and just feel free to get in touch with me. I don't know if you have my email, but it's tdonald@georgianbluffs.ca. And I'm also up in the community Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I keep office hours from 9 to 4:30. Sometimes I stay later till 5:30. I've even stayed later until 6:30 because of inclement weather, which we've seemed to have been having. But so I'm available, and if you don't feel comfortable coming to the township office, we can meet in another setting, and I'm completely fine with that, and I've accommodated that as well. So, and feel free to, if email is not your preferred format, feel free to write up a list and we can sit down and we can discuss it over coffee. So yeah, just take some time and and feel free to forward me whatever ideas you might have.
Thanks, Trevor. One of the things I wonder, Trevor, is we have a community climate action team meeting coming up on September 27th, and whether that request would be appropriate to take to them.
To the chair, I think going back to Councillor Coburn's comments yesterday, I do identify, I know that most of you are comprised of the climate action team. I do identify that as a stakeholder, and I don't think I'd be prepared myself to go to the climate action team. I have sat on your wider discussion call, but I think if you would like to take that to them and then get their input and then bring it to me through the committee, I think that would be much better. I don't want to be seen as having preferential over stakeholders. And I don't want that to be a barrier later down the road. So if I'm talking to so-and-so and it's seen that, for example, I only interact with the climate action team. I don't want that to be a barrier to people talking to me going forward. And I don't know if that's a valid concern, but I think Councillor Coburn did touch on that yesterday. And I think in thinking about it, I think that would be probably a preferred way to go forward.
Yeah, and I wasn't suggesting you come and ask for that. I was suggesting that as co-chair, I could table that and get their input because they have a lot of community connections that I think would be really useful.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve?
Through you, Chair Schneider, to you as well. That would be great if you could kind of communicate that group for us. That would be awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Trevor. Trevor, sorry, I must have cut you off before. I didn't realize you weren't finished. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, Chairperson. I think we're all good on this end.
Good, thank you. All right, so then moving forward, I'm going to start with an announcement, and then we'll go through the rest of the additions of the agenda. And the announcement is that the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Team has connected with Dr. Blair Feltmate, who is from the Intact Center at the University of Waterloo, and he will be doing a presentation on Zoom for the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Team on October the 20th at 7. And his focus will be weather and flooding and extreme kind of flooding situations, and how as community members and communities we can deal with that. And then actually John will be joining and giving a bit of an update. He's been studying the local weather patterns over the last number of years, and he's going to give us some information on that as well. I think this will be a really, really good session, both for constituents, but also for staff and council members. So our flyer is almost done, and I'm wondering if I can share that with Brittany to have it distributed as well. And it may be one that would be good to put on the website because I think this impacts everybody. So I see you nodding, Brittany, so thank you. I will get that to you as quickly as we can. Okay, so other additions. I think, Sue, you had two pieces of information that you shared with the committee. One, the PCP notes, and the other one was on the electric vehicle charging stations, I think. So do you want to speak to those two, please?
Thank you, Anne. Those are just sort of notes from two sessions that I sat in on. Well, the one on electric vehicles was a presentation that was done to County Council. So just, I thought some of that was just kind of interesting for committee. I'm not sure I really have anything to add to that. I don't know enough about all of this at times to answer difficult questions. I just thought I would forward those notes. The one thing I did manage to go back on the PCP one, when it was doing the target setting methods, the bottom up, I missed what the disadvantages were, and they finally sent out the slide deck for that. So disadvantages to doing a bottom up were too conservative to mitigate climate change, was the comment made there. So again, as I say, just my kind of notes, things that I think are things we need to be aware of. There were some questions asked. I'm just trying to find where some of those were. Sorry, there was, one of the comments was setting an ambitious target is a great way to start because it provides impetus to get started. Another comment made by one of the presenters was, and this really reflects on me and others as elected officials, very easy for us to set these excessive targets because we're not the ones that are going to have to implement them. So it's important for us as a committee to look at only setting targets for this term, maybe a little into the next term, so that it keeps all of council accountable, because we've set these targets for ourselves, not for 2030 or 2050 when we're probably not going to be here. So does it really impact? Does it just makes us look good for now? So I think that was something that's quite important, to keep those targets kind of short range, but to be ambitious with them because it may get people motivated and moving. I think that's it. Unless anybody has questions, I'll try and answer them.
Can I just make a comment on that, Sue? And then if there are questions, I guess my comment would be having short-term targets that fit within the kind of range of the term that we have councillors sitting, but also have some longer-term targets that are goals, so that people can see the full picture of what's needed and where we're headed. That would be my own comment on that. Any other comments on what Sue had to say? No? Okay. So then, the other additions to the agenda, and it's unfortunate that Kathy's not here on this one, but was recommending a bit of a review of the committee protocol. And I think it was as much for the benefit of us community members who are less familiar with the process and kind of not understanding what needs to become a motion to council versus something that can be a committee action. I think I see, Brittany, you're nodding, and I wonder if you could speak to that a bit.
Yes, absolutely. So as you will recall, when this committee was formed, I believe in November of 2020 or so, we did have an initial kind of information session that outlined what an advisory committee is, what that means, and how we forward our information to council for their approval. So what I would recommend is at our next committee meeting, or if the committee wishes to, we could call a special meeting for this purpose. We would again go through that presentation. I can add some additional information about how motions are presented, what motions should be presented, etc. So I would recommend we go through the mandate as well as that presentation again, even if it's at a high level, just as a reinforcement of what an advisory committee role is. And Chair or Vice Chair Schneider, if I may, I would like to include one of our other additions in this discussion as well, which is how committee members can request to have agenda items placed on any agenda. So similar to the council structure, any committee member may make a request for an addition to the agenda. It just has to be provided to myself prior to publication of that agenda, or it then becomes an addition to the agenda at the meeting. So at any time, if a member wishes to add an item for discussion, they may do so through myself or through our deputy clerk, so long as it's prior to that publication deadline. So that's traditionally the Thursday prior to the meetings or the Monday prior to the meetings on the Fridays. So if it pleases the committee, we can definitely send out an email prior to finalizing that agenda to gather any feedback of the committee. And should you have any requests for additions, that's how you can make them, through Carly and I. So in sum, I will prepare informational presentations, documents, etc. for the next committee meeting. We can sit down and go through them regarding the mandate, motions, advisory committee, etc. And we'll commence circulating emails to all of the committee members asking for additions prior to finalizing the agendas moving forward.
Thank you, Brittany. Any questions? Okay, and I think that there was a discussion then with Trevor and Kathy that there would be some communication between Trevor and Kathy and kind of also addressing what agenda items needed to come to the table. So that would be in addition to requesting agenda items from committee members. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Chairperson.
Oh, sorry, Trevor, thank you.
And I'll refer to committee of the whole, and I don't know if you watched it or not, but Councillor Coburn did bring up a good point that we want to reduce redundancy. So if an issue has been spoken about, and I can see this in the committee of the whole as well, that there is redundant issues, and I feel that some good points were brought up by Councillor Coburn in terms of it causes confusion, and it's not a good value of the committee's time. So I think it's good that you guys will vet some of the agenda items and then reduce that redundancy, and then that way we can be very laser focused in what we're trying to accomplish.
Good. Thank you, Trevor. Any other comments? Okay, so I think we had one other coming from Bob on the Manitoulin past climate action coordinator. Bob.
Okay. Yeah, I was just up on Manitoulin Island in the past week and a half, I guess, poking around. I haven't spent any time up there before, and it was quite an interesting area. I went to a festival one evening at Kagawan, which is kind of in the center of the island at the top end. And there was a little booth set up, and there was two ladies there promoting electric vehicle use and some sort of bus idea to to connect communities together on the island. And I was talking with one of the ladies there, and her name is Kim Neal, and she was the climate action coordinator for the municipality of Billings and Central Manitoulin Island for 7 months, I guess, and then found it kind of tough going and has branched off into continuing the same type of work but using a different model. And just talking with her, she's an environmental engineer from the University of Guelph, and she knew my son, who was also an environmental engineer from the University of Guelph. And she just had some really interesting ideas in terms of how to do and how not to do things. And I just thought it might be worthwhile for her to kind of hook up with Trevor and talk about stuff, and possibly even talk to our committee. I thought she had some really interesting ideas. She said quite a bit of experience in the environmental field before doing this work on Manitoulin as well, and it all kind of relates. So I just thought this may be a good resource person that could possibly give us some ideas that might help move us along too. So I just suggested that, perhaps it would be good to talk with her at some point, and and maybe we could get her on as a person on one of our meetings. I didn't know how to approach that, but anyways, that's what it is.
So in essence, wondering whether she would be invited to do a delegation and conversation with us.
Right.
Would the committee like Bob to pursue that? I see some nods, I see some hands. So Bob, can we ask you to connect with her and see if we can set that up?
Okay.
It feels to me like our next meeting might be fairly full because we're reviewing kind of committee protocols, plus we're reviewing work plans and kind of timeframes and that. So I'm wondering whether maybe not the next meeting, but the subsequent meeting might be more appropriate. I'm seeing nods. We okay with that? All right. All right, Trevor, I see your hand up.
Just going on Bob's point, Chairperson, into the committee. I kind of wanted. I didn't want to announce this right now, but because of what Bob had just brought up, I think it's a good kind of transition. So on October 6th, I'll be speaking on FCM's How to Prepare Municipal Climate Staff for Success. And we'll be talking about what Bob just referred to in terms of, how a coordinator or person in this position kind of, how are they successful, and what barriers and things that they run into. And I can send that to Carly, and then she can distribute that if you guys wish to attend. But I thought that was a good transition, Chairperson.
Thank you. Yes. All right. So Bob, you will connect with her.
Right. Have we got a date?
Well, we don't just yet. Okay. So I think that the next item on our agenda, I think maybe to set our next meeting date. But I wondered if prior to that, if I see Al has been in our meeting for part of it, so he's here now. And I think it might be just a really good opportunity to thank Al for his work with the municipality and with this committee, and also to really wish him well as he moves on to Norfolk County. So I don't know whether anybody wants to make any other comments, but certainly on my behalf of the committee and the community, thank you very much, Al, for what you've done for Georgian Bluffs. So.
Thank you very much. If you were in person, you'd see me blushing right now, but thank you very much. It's been a great committee to work with. I think we've made some good progress in the short time that I was here, and I have every confidence that Steve, Brittany, and Trevor, along with the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Coburn, will continue to move the climate file forward on behalf of Georgian Bluffs, and with your assistance as a committee providing some guidance, I think Georgian Bluffs is in very good hands. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, and best of luck, Al. Yeah. Okay, so the last item, we don't have a closed session, and we don't have a notice of motion, and we don't have new business, I don't think. All right, so that's actually one of the things, Brittany, that I could really get some clarification on is the difference between what we've just done and new business. So, if that gets covered in your overview, that would be really useful to me because I'm not clear on that. All right, so date of the next meeting. So I think I heard from Steve that the internal work plan will be done in about a week, and that he will then circulate it to committee members for input and for tweaking. And then it will be ready to come to this committee to look at, endorse, and then meld with the committee work plan. Have I got that right, Steve? Yep, okay. So given that, should we be doing the next meeting? That sounds like a week to get the plan ready and out, a week to get feedback. Would it be too soon to come back to committee then in 2 weeks, or what are you suggesting there, Steve?
I was suggesting the week of October 15th in there, just kind of gives with more feedback so the committee has more time to provide more comments. I don't want to say, okay, you guys got a week. I'd like to have a little bit more thinking on it than that. So, October 15th would be your best option from where I sit.
All right. Does that feel all right, folks? All right. I see some thumbs up. Danuta,
will not be available on October 15th, but that's fine. I trust everybody.
I think you were talking about the week of. Are you gone for the whole week, Danuta?
No, I'm just going to be away on the 15th, 14th and 15th.
Okay, so there would be another day in there maybe? So Brittany, you're the keeper of the calendar. What are you suggesting?
Well, we have a few other committee meetings internally on the Tuesday, so I think I would lean more towards the Wednesday being the 13th, likely in the morning if the committee is able to accommodate that, maybe 10 a.m.
That seem okay? October 13th, 10 a.m.?
Oh, yeah, that's all right.
Okay, it's a go. That was easy. Thank you, Brittany.
No problem.
Okay, and so do we want to plan a subsequent meeting date so that Bob has a date that he can go? And I'm sorry, what was her name?
Kim. Neal.
Yep. So he can go to Kim to arrange that. So what's the suggestion for the next date?
If I may, Madam Vice Chair, I think I would look towards the last week of October or the first week of November, thereby calling that meeting 2 weeks following our next.
Okay, all right. And what would that date be then? Do you have a date that works for you?
Depending on the wishes of the committee, if we look in the last week of October, it's relatively open.
Okay.
The first week of November is not as open.
So why don't we pick a day in that? So, sorry, Sue, I see your hand up.
That's okay. I'm wondering if on that last week of October, we could go back to the Friday being the 29th.
Does that work? Yep. Okay, I'm seeing lots of nods, so we're good. And at 10 a.m. again? Does that work for you, Brittany? All right, so we have the next 2 meetings confirmed. All right. So that leaves us at, no closed session. We do a motion to adjourn, right?
Yes, please.
All right, so can somebody move to, so Sue, a seconder? Luke, show of hands. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Yes.
Bye, everyone.